जय श्री श्री राधा लीला माधव की जय श्री जगन्नाथ बलदेव सुभद्रा माई की जय श्री राम राम रामानुजा हनुमान जी की जय. Thank you very much. We welcome all of you today to Srila Radha Leela Madhav Dham, and tomorrow is the most auspicious day of the blessed appearance of our most beloved and eternal spiritual master, Srila Mahavishnu Goswami Gurudev ki. So today we want to look at a very important verse from Bhagavad Gita. It is a verse, chapter 2, text 66. Text 66. So let us look at 266. I will just chant the verse, and then after that, Prasanna Prabhu will translate the verse in Gujarati. Should we do it? Or should we just do English? Okay, fine. So we do English today. So then we will not have the fortune of hearing Prasanna Prabhu chant and translate it in Gujarati. Because even though I don't understand, I relish the fact that he's translating it so nicely. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. युक्तस्य न च युक्तस्य भावना न च भावयता शान्ति अशान्तस्य कुतः सुखम् नास्ति बुद्धिरयुक्तस्य न च युक्तस्य भावना न च भावयता शान्ति अशान्तस्य कुतः सुखम् नास्ति बुद्धिरयुक्तस्य न च युक्तस्य भावना न च भावयता शान्ति अशान्तस्य कुतः सुखम्. Would anyone like to chant? नास्ति बुद्धिरयुक्तस्य न च युक्तस्य भावना Mataji's, anyone? Na asti, there cannot be buddhi, transcendental intelligence, ayuktasya, of one who is not connected with Krishna consciousness. Na, not, cha, and ayuktasya, of one devoid of Krishna consciousness. Bhavana, fixed mind in happiness. Na, not, cha, and abhavayataha, of one who is not fixed. Shantihi, peace. Ashantasya, of the unpeaceful. Kutaha, where is sukham, happiness. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada ki. Please repeat, one who is not connected with the Supreme in Krishna consciousness can have neither transcendental intelligence nor a steady mind, without which there is no possibility of peace. And how can there be any happiness without peace? And how can there be any happiness without peace? Please hear the purport. Unless one is in Krishna consciousness, there is no possibility of peace. Unless one is in Krishna consciousness, there is no possibility of peace. So it is confirmed in the 5th chapter, 529, that when one understands that Krishna is the only enjoyer of all the good results of sacrifice and penance, that He is the proprietor of all universal manifestations, and that He is the real friend of all living entities, then only can one have real peace. Therefore, if one is not in Krishna consciousness, there cannot be a final goal for the mind. Disturbance is due to want of an ultimate goal. And when one is certain that Krishna is the enjoyer, proprietor, and friend of everyone and everything, then one can, with a steady mind, bring about peace. Therefore, one who is engaged without a relationship with Krishna is certainly always in distress and is without peace, however much he may make a show of peace and spiritual advancement in life. Krishna consciousness is a self-manifested, peaceful condition which can be achieved only in relationship with Krishna. Krishna consciousness is a self-manifested, peaceful condition which can be achieved only in relationship with Krishna. Om Ajnana-timirandasya Jnananjana-shalakaya Chakshurmilitam yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Sri Chaitanya Manoਭीष्टं Sthapitam yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamahyam Vidati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Utapadakoladam Shri Guru Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sabrajatam Sahagana Raghunatham Vidam Tam Sajivam Sarvaitam Sarvadutam Adilajaitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Mada Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhanvitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Deenabandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Taptakanchana Gaurange Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Namo Mahavadanyaya Krishna Prema Pradayate Krishnaya Krishna Chaitanya Namne Gaure Tishe Namaha Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya eva cha Paditana Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhara Sri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So this verse is very important, one of the most important verses from Bhagavad Gita. 1 minute. Because it speaks about connection. Actually, when Maharaj discussed this verse, he said that when we speak about connection to Krishna, what we actually mean is actually consciousness of Krishna. Connection and consciousness are the same concepts. You cannot be conscious of someone unless you're connected to the person. Isn't it true? In this world, you will not be conscious of someone unless you have some connection with them. And if you're not connected with someone, it's very hard to be conscious of the person. Because the more conscious we are of someone, the more we love that person. So consciousness is actually a symptom of one's love. And therefore, when you are conscious of someone, you become more deeply connected with them. This is the point to be understood here. So when we say that we are not connected to Krishna, that means what we are saying is that we are not conscious of Krishna. And how do we become conscious of Krishna? Prabhupada in the purport tells us 3 ways to become conscious of Krishna, to become connected to Krishna. Srila Prabhupada says, and he quotes chapter 5, text 29, and he says that we should all, first of all, understand that we are not the enjoyers, that only Krishna is the enjoyer. This is the starting point for connection. If we are convinced that Krishna alone has the right to enjoy, and that all of us have the right to serve, then we will become connected to Krishna. That's the first point. The second point Prabhupada gives is that we should understand that Krishna is the proprietor of everything. In other words, not only does he enjoy, but those who enjoy something, they can only enjoy if they own something. You cannot enjoy something which doesn't belong to you. That enjoyment in the material world is unlawful. If you enjoy another man's wife, it is unlawful because it doesn't belong to you from a material perspective. If you take somebody else's prasadam from his plate and you enjoy it, it is unlawful. Of course, you will say, Prabhu, I'm taking maha, but that's a different story. If you take someone else's plate that actually belongs to him, you are taking something unlawfully, and therefore you're not entitled to enjoy it. So our connection to Krishna is lost when Prabhupada says we actually first of all want to enjoy separately from Krishna. That is the starting point of the loss of our connection with Krishna. And that's why for so many years before we came to devotional service, we could have happiness, but we did not have peace. We had happiness, but that happiness was temporary. For a while someone makes us happy, but very often that same person who is the source of happiness very often becomes the source of grief and distress. But if we are connected to Krishna by understanding that our family and everything that comes to us, we are meant to serve them, or we are meant to utilize whatever that is there for Krishna, then our connection with Him deepens. This is a fact, and Prabhupada is giving us. And the third point that he gives us, for us to understand that we are connected to Krishna, is when we realize that Krishna is the real friend of all of us. He is the real friend. Everyone else may come and go, but Krishna will never leave us. Pingala had to learn it the hard way, isn't it? For so many days and years, she worked to satisfy other men. But at the end of the day, when all these men could not satisfy her, she became morose. And she chanted that famous verse, Shantam Samipe Ramanam Rati Pradam. She showed in that shloka that all along I was thinking that the source of attraction was the source of my happiness. But actually this attraction was for something temporary, and therefore there was no connection. Which now brings us to the most important point of connection. If you connect to something which is temporary, your happiness is also temporary. Isn't it true? So therefore, when we try to establish relationships with those who themselves are temporary, how can we expect that relationship to give us something permanent? It just doesn't make sense, even from a logical point of view, right? So if you are to rely on someone, and you rely your happiness on that person, and that person themselves cannot last, then how can the happiness derived from them by way of connection last? It cannot last. So that is why in Shastras it is nicely stated that when we are not connected to Krishna, it is actually like a child who has cut off its link with its father and mother. When a child, cuts off their link with father and mother, it is a very difficult thing. We may sometimes cut off links with our parents because we are angry with them. But we will realize that without that connection, our life is very seldom rich, at least from a material point of view. Second example given by Shastras, that like a branch that is cut off from the tree, if you cut a branch from the tree, the branch may look like it's alive, but after a while, science will tell you that the branch is dead, because the source of all its life was the tree. So if we are not connected to Krishna, the source of all our life, the source of all our prosperity, our power, in other words, our connection is gone, and we have no life. And the third example that's nicely given, Prabhupada gives it, is a spark. When fire is burning, you see a spark coming out, isn't it? And the spark sometimes comes out. If you're near to the spark and you touch it, you will realize that it is very hot. But give it 1 minute or so, the same spark dies off, because it has lost its connection with Krishna. That's why Maharaj used to tell us that just by seeing our faces, he could tell if we were connected to Krishna or not. If our faces were dull, very often it's because something was wrong in our life, and because there is no connection to Krishna. This is a very important point. When our sadhana becomes the platform for connection with Krishna, when our behavior as devotees become the platform for connection with Krishna, and when Krishna becomes pleased with us, then we can be connected with Him. Maharaj always quoted this point, you can only remember Krishna if Krishna remembers you. You can only be connected with Krishna if Krishna is connected with you. It's the same point. And how do we connect with Krishna? On the basis of how we are qualified to be connected to Krishna. This is a very important point. The best way to connect to Krishna is by chanting Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram, Hare Hare. And because we have been in Krishna consciousness for so many years, it is very easy to take chanting as a process for granted. It's very easy for us to think that, oh, chanting is there, but I still don't feel connected to Krishna. Because our chanting must have a feeling of quality. That is very important. Janma Aishwarya Shruta Shrivir Edamana Madaha Puman Naivarhati Abhidatum Vai Tvam Makinchana Gocharam. Yesterday we spoke about this verse, isn't it? And Kunti Mata says so nicely that when we have these four opulences, Janma, birth, Aishwarya, wealth, Shruta, education, Shrivir, good looks, all these four, they actually don't deepen our connection with Krishna. In fact, they actually distance our connection with Krishna. Especially when we become pramatnana, when we become insanely attached to these four. When we are very attached to these four, then we forget our connection to Krishna. We become more connected to our looks. We become very connected that we are brahmanas. We become very connected to the fact that we think that we are very rich. And we become very connected to the fact that we think that we are very educated. In all this, the connection with Krishna is lost. But Kunti Mata says that if you chant with feeling, if you have quality to chanting, then that quality will allow us to be connected to Krishna. So this quality is very important. But in order for us to be connected to Krishna, chanting, hearing, glorifying, that result is, how do we know if we are connected to Krishna? Maharaj said there's only one symptom that will show when we are connected to Krishna. And that is the symptom of peace. Peace. How can there be happiness without peace? Isn't it? The end of this shloka is that if we are connected to Krishna, you can easily see the symptom. We don't have to fool ourselves. Are you peaceful in your heart? If you are not peaceful in your heart, then even though you're performing devotional service, something must be wrong in the way we are performing the devotional process. That is why we don't feel connected. That is why we feel disconnected. So we have no one to blame. We have to look at what we are doing, which is wrong. So Maharaj said this is the naked truth of the shloka 266. That you cannot cheat anyone. Prabhupada writes in the purport, you cannot make a show of advancement, of peace and happiness. You can't. How long will you show that you are peaceful? Eventually the show has to end. Eventually you have to prove to yourself that actually you're very disturbed inside. How long can we pretend, Maharaj said, to be devotees? Maybe one day, maybe 2 days, maybe 1 year, maybe 2 years. But eventually, when you are not peaceful, it will show on your face. I asked Maharaj the question, how do we know if someone is peaceful? You will know, Maharaj said, if someone is peaceful, if in that presence of that person, others become peaceful. In the presence of that person, if others feel peaceful, and you see them and you realize, hey, everyone else is very peaceful in his presence or her presence, then you know that devotee is very peaceful. Maharaj also said, if you speak to a devotee and you feel very peaceful when you speak to that devotee, you know that devotee is connected to Krishna. So I asked Maharaj, but sometimes I'm speaking to a devotee and he's very peaceful. Everybody feels he's peaceful, but I am not very peaceful when I speak to him. Why? Maharaj said, that's because you are envious of him. That's why you are not peaceful. Don't blame the devotee, blame your own envy. Because your envy is also a great source of disconnection between you and Krishna. All the great demons, they had Janma, they had Aishwarya, they had Shruta. I'm not sure whether they were good looking, but at least they had all this Aishwarya. But despite having all of this, they were never peaceful. In fact, all the demons in Bhagavatam, if you realize, they were always anxious, Kamsa was perpetually in a state of anxiety. 8 child of Devaki. He walked 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. you remember the eighth child of Devaki, right? If you read Hiranyakashipu was never peaceful. He was always very disturbed. He did so much of tapas, and in the end he was frustrated. And during that tapas, he did not realize that his wife and his son were kidnapped by the Devatas. How much anxiety must have been there. And even when Prahlad was growing up as a boy, he was so anxious because he could not take it that his son was connected to Krishna. So actually, we also become disconnected with Krishna when we are envious of his devotees. This is another reason why we become disconnected from Krishna. You know, in the example of Chaitanya Charitamrita, there is that disciple of Ishwar Puri. There was the disciple of Madhavendra Puri. There was Ishwar Puri and there was Ramchandra Puri. Ramchandra Puri was never connected with Krishna because he was always finding fault with devotees. Always finding fault. In fact, Chaitanya Charitamrita said that he had a modus operandi. Modus operandi means he had a plan. What he would do is, he would come to the house of all the devotees. Then he would get one nice, renounced devotee or sannyasi. He would sit them down. For example, he would get Paramanand Puri, another sannyasi. He would sit him down. He would say, now take some prasadam. He would take. Then he would put more and more and more on the plate. And Paramanand Puri would say, no, as a sannyasi I should not eat so much. Then Ramchandra Puri would say, no, it's okay, I'm giving it to you out of love, so eat. So when the whole plate became full, and Paramanand Puri ate, then as he was leaving, Ramchandra Puri would criticize Paramanand Puri. And he would say, what kind of sannyasi is he? Eating more than necessary. You are the one who fed him so much. And then after that you criticize him. So like that, Ramchandra Puri was finding fault with devotees all the time. In fact, it came to a point where he was trying to find fault with Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Can you imagine that? But even though he was trying to find fault, he couldn't find fault. He would try to find out what time Mahaprabhu would wake up, what time he would go to sleep. He tried to find out how many rounds does he chant, when does he chant. Imagine a devotee walking around and asking, Prabhu, what time do you chant? And then when you wake up in the morning, you see a devotee outside watching whether you're coming for Mangala Arati. How do you feel? I would feel very pressured. And so Ramchandra Puri was doing that. And he could not find any fault with Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Until one day came. Ramchandra Puri entered the house where Mahaprabhu had just finished prasad and he was getting up. And Ramchandra Puri saw ants. You know ants? He saw ants walking on the floor. And when he saw the ants, he said, where there are ants, there must have been remnants of a lot of prasadam. And who was eating here? It must have been Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So because he was eating so much, the ants have come. Therefore, he is eating more than is necessary. See how he tried to find fault. And because he did that, all the devotees disconnected themselves from him. Because they did not want to offend him, but they were really afraid of him. They did not want to be connected with him. And if you're not connected with devotees, how will you be connected with Krishna? For Krishna, devotees are so pleasing and so precious. If you don't become connected to devotees, do you really think you can become connected to Krishna? You can't. If we are not connected to our spiritual master, how can we become connected to Krishna? It's not possible. So in the end, Ramchandra Puri's criticisms got him completely disconnected with Sadhu Sangha. And eventually, he left the Sadhu Sangha of devotees. Because when we become disconnected with Krishna, the symptom of that is we are not peaceful. But the second symptom of that, Shastra say, is that we will develop more and more material desires. There will be more and more material desires in our heart when we become disconnected from Krishna. So now we must check our own list. Don't check other people's list. Check your own list. And are my material desires increasing? So many years of devotional service, but my desire is increasing. Why? Because our connection is not deepened. Our connection is not deepened. When we use the word increase our connection, Maharaj actually had a different word to use. He said instead of using the word increase our connection, we should use the word deepen our connection. When we deepen our connection, our foundation becomes very strong with Krishna. That is what we must do. We may appear to lose materially when we connect with Krishna, but spiritually, we are always deeper in benefit. One very good example we can get in Krishna consciousness is Jatayu. You remember Jatayu, the vulture king? Jatayu in Ramayana was actually retired. He was very old. He was not strong. In those days he was very strong. But by the time Ravana had captured Sita and was flying across with his chariot, Jatayu was actually retired, not strong. But when he saw that Ravana had caught Sita and Sita was crying for help, Jatayu did not keep still. He saw it as his service to serve Mother Sita. And what did he do? He flew up in the air and he fought Ravana. And Ramayana tells us that even though he was not so powerful, he gave Ravana a good run for his money, so to speak. In fact, in the beginning part of the fight, he was almost going to defeat Ravana. He was cutting and slashing into Ravana, and he was even pushing off the helmet of Ravana. But eventually Ravana was so powerful that with his sword, he slashed the wings fatally of Jatayu. And Jatayu fell to this world. And he was mortally wounded. Now Ram and Lakshman were passing by and they were frantically looking for Sita. And when they saw this big bird lying down, first they thought that it could be Ravana. Then they thought it could be one of the disciples or friends of Ravana. They approached Jatayu very carefully. But when they saw that it was Jatayu, the king of the vulture, and when Jatayu started speaking to tell them what he had tried to do, then they realized what a great personality Jatayu was. So Ramayana tells us that even though Jatayu was materially, he lost the war, rather he lost the battle with Ravana, but he won the war. He won the war against Maya, because though he could not, actually succeed, even though on paper he could not succeed in his service, Lord Ram and Lakshman were so happy and pleased with his attempt at serving Krishna as Lord Ram, at serving Mother Sita, who is not different as Lakshmi Devi, that when Jatayu left the world, they performed his funeral rites. And Lord Ram declared on that day that even though it pains me to be separated from Sita, today I am more pained at my separation from Jatayu. Why? Because Jatayu's connection with Lord Ram was very deep. He did not fight to succeed materially. This is a very important point. Very often when we perform devotional service, we think that there must be some outcome from devotional service. Just like material work, there is an outcome. But outcome is not in our hands. Connection is in our hands. But outcome is not in our hands. Vritasur fought the war with Indra. But Bhagavatam will tell you that he failed to kill Indra. He failed. But he succeeded because his connection with Krishna deepened even though he failed materially. You see the point? Parikshit Maharaj failed in this world because he was cursed. But he succeeded because after that curse, his connection to Krishna deepened. It deepened. This is the important point. There is a vast difference between material perfection and spiritual purity. Purity doesn't equate to material opulence. Very often, Sudama, for example, what qualification he had? He had no qualification. But despite that, he was very much connected to Krishna. Even though Parikshit Maharaj was so qualified, but he was cursed. And though he was cursed, he appeared to have lost everything. But the truth of the matter is, he was deeply connected. In all of these instances, you will see that the connection of the devotees had nothing to do with their material standing. It had nothing to do with whether they were successful materially. This is a very important thing. Do not always equate our connection with what we call paper success. When we grow in Krishna consciousness, it's very easy for us to think, I have a big temple, I have deities, we are sitting in the temple, therefore we are successful. No. Vaishnava Seva Prabhu is constantly working to build a devotional congregation. We could have stopped with a temple and forget about everything else, but we have to deepen our connection with Krishna. Every year, every day. This is very important. But the deepening of our connection with Krishna does not depend on our material qualification. It depends on our acceptance that Krishna is the proprietor. He is the enjoyer. And that actually, He is our true friend, not anyone else. Jatayu, Lord Ram displayed and proved to Jatayu that he was the true friend of Jatayu. Because even though Jatayu tried and he failed, Lord Ram did not curse him, oh, why didn't you save Mother Sita? He was not angry with him even, he was not. It's a very important point for us to realize. So this connection means that we have thrown away our connection with Krishna. Sometimes because of our behavior, not only do we throw ourselves away, but because of our behavior, Krishna may abandon us. Just like Krishna abandoned the demons who did not believe in him, but Krishna never abandons his devotees. This is a very important point. Lord Ram wanted this beautiful bridge, powerful bridge built within a very short time. Overnight it was supposed to be built. And the devotees of the Lord, the Vanaras, they had full faith in Lord Ram. So when Lord Ram said, build the bridge, they had faith that they could build the bridge. Not because of their own prowess, but because of their connection to Krishna, their connection to Lord Ram. So another point we should take back from today is a symptom of our connection to Krishna is the amount of faith we have in Him. It is a direct relationship. How much you have faith, that much faith you have in Krishna, that much connection you will have. So Lord Ram then did not have to worry. He went into his camp, and when he came out, he saw devotees, the Vanaras, they were throwing all these huge rocks. They were throwing them into the water, and they were all floating. So Lord Ram came to them and asked them, particularly he asked Hanumanji, that how is it that all these rocks are floating in water? And Hanumanji said, it's very simple. We just write your name on the rock. And when we inscribe the rock with your name, Lord Ram, that rock has become connected to you, Krishna, Lord Ram. It has become connected to you. And because it has become connected to you, now it floats. So Lord Ram became very amazed. And so what he did was, he picked up one rock and he threw it into the water. But instead of the rock floating, the rock went right into the water. It entered, it just sunk into the water. So Lord Ram was thinking, these Vanaras, they are allowing the rocks to float. But why I am not? I am actually the person whom they are praying to. So what does this mean? And Hanumanji said so nicely that Lord Ram, I write your name. And therefore that stone, which is ordinarily a stone, becomes connected to you. It has your Sangha. This is a very important point. When we write Krishna's name, when we chant Krishna's name, immediately what do we get? We get Krishna's Sangha. We get Krishna's Sangha. But then, Hanumanji told Lord Ram, but when you throw it, my Lord, and you don't write any name to it, you have rejected the stone. You have abandoned the stone. And because you have just thrown it into the water, it has become rejected. What chance then does this stone have to survive at the top of the water? It has no chance. And therefore, it is stated very nicely, do anything and everything. Perform all your karmas, but perform them in such a way that the Lord will not reject you. This is what Maharaj told us. Do your actions in such a way that you are not rejected. Instead, perform your devotional service in such a way that you are always connected. This is a very important point. If you are not connected to Krishna, then just like the rocks that go into the water, we will also just dive deep into this material ocean. of birth and death. That is what will happen to us. And this connection, as I said to you now, is never established on material lives. It is only established on the basis of our sadhana and on the basis of our deepening of connection. Look at Bali Maharaj. Bali Maharaj was bound by the ropes of Varuna and humiliated and humbled by Vamandev. It appeared as if Bali was disconnected from Vamandev actually, isn't it? Because of his pride, because of his asat sangha, he was disconnected. He thought he was the proprietor. He thought he was the enjoyer. And he thought all his friends were his actual friends. But Vamandev came back to reclaim him. Why? Why did Vamandev give Bali Maharaj so much mercy? Only because of two things. Because Bali Maharaj was the grandson of Prahlad Maharaj. Because of Sadhu Sangha, Krishna re-established his connection with the grandson of Bali. So that is another way to establish connection with Krishna. Through the agency of serving the pure devotees of the Lord, through the agency of serving the devotees of the Lord, we become connected to Krishna. Bhaktaye Bhakta Janapriyaha. What to speak of my devotees? Even the devotees of my devotees are very, very dear to me. Very dear to me. So even though Bali was disconnected, Vamandev came personally to connect him. And how did he do that? By taking away all his material qualifications. So sometimes Krishna is so kind as a true friend that even though you are very qualified, he may take everything away from you. He can. Overnight he can just take everything away. But when he does that, he deepens your connection to him. This is important. So Bali lost everything. But he did not lose one thing, his determination to become connected to Krishna. And that is the second point, right? The second point after faith. If we want to be connected to Krishna, first we must have faith in Krishna. And second, we must have determination to actually serve Krishna. F is faith and D is determination. Maharaj called it fixed deposit. F and D, isn't it? If your faith is strong and your determination is strong, then it becomes an FD. You fix your deposit where? In the bank of Krishna. And that deposit is such a good investment that you will always earn on it. Always you will earn on it. Maharaj said you will never lose if your faith is strong and your determination is strong. And Bali Maharaj was the emblem of determination. When he decided that he will wash the lotus feet of Vamandev, nothing came his way. Even Sukracharya, his own guru, who gave him all the favorable arguments that this is Vishnu, you're going to be cheated, you will lose everything. Of course, the side story was, if Bali Maharaj loses everything, then Sukracharya will be out of work, isn't it? And if he's unemployed, then what's going to happen to him? So it was in his interest that Bali continue to reject Vamandev. But Bali said, no, I have given my vow. And even if Vishnu is the enemy, and he has come in the form of a Brahmana, I will not break my vow. And because of his determination, even though Krishna as Vamandev humiliated him by taking 2 steps and third step nowhere to go, even though Vamandev tied him up like a commoner, Bali Maharaj was determined to fulfill his promise. And so in his heart, he paid obeisances to Bali. He paid obeisances to Vamandev. And Vamandev accepted the obeisances. Why? Because Prabhupada writes in the purport, the nature of Krishna is that he is Bhavagrahi Janardana. Bhavagrahi Janardana. He is one who takes the essence of your devotional mentality. He is not interested in the flaws you have. He is not interested in the mistakes you may make. Supposing you're doing arati and you forget that you are supposed to do 7 and you did 5.5. Krishna is not going to cut off connection with you because of that. Now you didn't do this, right? Cut off connection today. No, he will not do that. He won't do that. I remember one time I was in UK with Maharaj, and I was very young in Krishna consciousness, and I had no idea how to do Arati. And so at the end of the youth program, all the youths were new, and only person senior was Maharaj. And so they said, Maharaj, sit down. And then they thought I was very senior, so they told me to do the Arati. So I went up to Maharaj and I said, Maharaj, I don't know the sequence. What should I do? I will commit offense. Maharaj said, don't worry about sequence. Don't worry about how many times you have to do it. I said, Maharaj, can you do it? Maharaj said, when I'm doing, I also forget the sequence. It's all right. What you do is, you just chant Krishna's names and you do how many rounds you want. Because you don't know, right? Just do it. But you must remember Krishna. If you do it very nicely and you're counting, very good, but you forget to be connected to Krishna, what is the point of that? Krishna will take the essence of your remembrance of Him, not how you externally perform a service. And that I learned that very important lesson that day. Of course, after that I tried to learn the sequences. And somehow I survived that day. Because after that somebody came and told me, Prabhu, the Arati was very nice. And I thought, I don't know what I was doing. But Maharaj said that if you are connected to Krishna, then no one finds any fault. Because by connecting to Krishna, you become very peaceful and happy. And when you are peaceful and happy, everyone around you becomes peaceful and happy. They don't find fault with you because they are very peaceful. That's why Krishna consciousness is a self-manifested peaceful condition. Just like we went to see Dwarkadish. Dwarkadish is self-manifested. Dwarkanath is self-manifested. These deities came on their own. Therefore, Krishna consciousness is already in the heart. Right? Nitya Siddha Krishna Prema. It is already in the heart. Therefore, it is self-manifested. It is a peaceful condition. We just have to get connected to it. It's like you have this beautiful chandelier. It's in the temple. But if there's no connection to the main electricity, then what is the point of the chandelier? It looks very nice, but it will not help. It will not work. So you may look externally very nice, but connection is not there. What's the point? So this verse is really talking about that connection with Krishna must be self-manifested. You cannot wait for someone to manifest it in you. It becomes our duty. Don't blame other people that I'm not peaceful. Prabhu, because of you I'm not peaceful. You know, Vaishnava says, oh, Prabhu, you did not create nice peaceful atmosphere, therefore I'm disturbed. It's very easy. Maharaj told me the person whom everybody blames is Vaishnava Seva. But he's doing the most seva. He's doing everything for everyone. We take the hotel room, the fan doesn't work, Vaishnava Seva Prabhu, fan doesn't work. We turn on the tap is not working properly, Vaishnava Seva Prabhu, tap is not working properly. But we don't see the effort he's putting. That's why Maharaj gave him the name Vaishnava Seva. Because by serving the Vaishnavas, we become connected. So do not see externalities so much. If the person whom you are connected to, if he is performing nice sadhana, if he makes some mistake somewhere, please deepen the connection to his sadhana and what he's doing for Krishna. Don't deepen your connection to the criticisms. Don't deepen your connection to the externalities. Deepen your connection to the principles. That is very important. What is that nice verse? There's a very nice verse that says this, if we can end with that verse. Vyadasya sharanam dhruvasya chavayo vidya gajendrasya kha Kubjaya kimunama rupamadikam kim tad sudham dhanam Vamso vamsako vidurasya yadavapate ugrasya kim paurusham bhaktya tushyati kevalam nachagune Bhakti Priya Mukunda. This is a very beautiful verse that's found in Rupa Goswami's compendium known as Padyavali. And there, Rupa Goswami, brings up this very important point. He says, where was the hunter Dharma's piety? You all know the story of Dharma, the hunter? In Mahabharata, Dharma was a hunter. And one time there was a Brahmana known as Kaushika. That Brahmana known as Kaushika was very proud of his Brahmanical qualities. He thought he was a great devotee. But the problem with him was because he was so proud of his abilities, he became very angry. He had a lot of pride. Where there is pride, there is anger. So one day he was sitting down and performing his penance, when all of a sudden a bird, which was seated on top, it just actually excreted droppings on the head of the Brahmana. Brahmana became so angry that he looked up at the bird, and with his anger, he just burnt the bird into ashes. Now Brahmana became upset with himself, and he decided that to neutralize this effect, he would go and do Madhukari. So he went to beg, and the first house he went to was a lady, and he said, "Mother, please give me some alms." And she said, "Wait, my husband is here. It is my dharma to serve him first." And Kaushika became very angry with her. And he said, "How dare you ignore me and serve your husband?" And she said, "I am not the bird on the branch for you to become angry with and burn." And Brahmana became very scared. What is this? How does she know that I was in the forest and I burned the bird? And then he said, "Mother, please tell me how you have become so strong in your tejas." She said, "Because I have learned the meaning of dharma from the hunter dharma." So Brahmana was thinking, how can this hunter be a person whom I can learn from? Where is his piety? This is the point that is being brought up in the shloka. Where is his piety? Brahmana, I have piety. I am performing everything very nicely. Everything is done according to dharma. All the rituals are performed very well. What is his dharma? So he decided to go and see him. So he went into the town of the country of Mithila, and there he saw Dharma. And to his surprise, this Dharma was a hunter. And he was thinking, what can I learn from the hunter? But he saw that every time the hunter was performing his Dharma, without exception, he was remembering the Lord. He knew that his Dharma was there. He realized that his Dharma was not perfect, but he realized that there was a higher Dharma that was higher than his imperfect Dharma. And that higher Dharma was Savai Pumsam Paro Dharma, Yathor Bhakti Radho Suje. So the Dharma, the hunter Dharma, taught Kaushika a very important lesson, that we may tick off all the boxes of Jnana Kanda and Karma Kanda and all these things, but if there is no devotion to Krishna, there is no connection. So the Dharma, the hunter Dharma, had no piety, but Krishna accepted him. Then it is very nicely stated by Rupa Goswami here, where was Dhruva's maturity? So first is Dharma's piety. Second is, where was Dhruva's maturity? Dhruvasya, where was his maturity? Dhruva Maharaj was 5 years old. He went to the forest not for pure devotional service. He didn't go there for pure devotional service. He went there because he wanted to be greater than his father and greater than his brother, and he wanted to snub his mother, his stepmother. That's all he wanted. And when Narada Muni came and told him, "Go home," he said, "No, I don't want to go home. I am not going to be so sadhu, but if you give me a way that I can attain what I want, which is still material, then do it, otherwise go." That was Dhruva Maharaj. So he was very immature. He did not come to bhakti because of ahaituki apratihata. No, he came with motive. But even though he came with motive, Krishna transformed his immaturity into spiritual maturity. He gave him that spiritual maturity because he executed the principle of devotional service. His sadhana was very nice. He was very sincere to all the instructions of his spiritual master, Narada. So he was imperfect, but he was spiritually perfect. So what is the first one? Dharma's piety. What is second one? Dhruva's immaturity. What is the third one? Gajendra's knowledge. Where was Gajendra's knowledge? Gajendra is elephant. elephants are not very smart. I have never seen an elephant with PhD. Never seen. Never heard. The only PhD an elephant has is how to break through a forest the way Gajendra did. That he could do, he couldn't do. But Gajendra had no knowledge of Krishna. He was not powerful at all. Bhagavatam tells us that he was instead intoxicated with sense gratification. And even though before that he was Indradyumna Maharaj, and he was a great devotee of the Lord, he was cursed by Agastya. And so he lost all his knowledge. That's why in this shloka, the question is asked, where was Gajendra's knowledge? Indradyumna Maharaj lost all his knowledge when he became Gajendra. But even though he lost all his knowledge, when he was caught by the jaws of the crocodile, he turned to Gajendra as Paramparayanam. The shelter, Gajendra turned to Krishna as Paramparayanam, the source of all shelters, the shelter of all shelters. And because he did that, what did Krishna do? Evam vyavasito buddhya samadhaya jajapa paramam japyam prajanmani anushikshitham. In 831 of Srimad Bhagavatam, we understand that where was Gajendra's knowledge? But Gajendra's knowledge came back to him because of the grace of Krishna. And how? Gajendra fixed his mind in his heart with perfect intelligence. And because of that, he remembered all the shlokas that he had chanted as Indradyumna Maharaj only by the grace of Krishna. So, elephant has no qualification. He had no knowledge, but all knowledge came to him. Tesham satata yuktanam bhajatam priti purvakam dadami buddhi yogam tam ye nama upayanti te. So what was first one? Dharma's piety. Second, Dhruva's immaturity. Third, Gajendra's knowledge. Fourth, where was Kubja's beauty? Kubja was not beautiful at all. In fact, she was very ugly. She was a hunchback, but she was serving Kamsa. But when Krishna and Balaram entered Mathura and Kubja saw Krishna, she wanted to disconnect from Kamsa and connect to Krishna. This is very important. You cannot connect to Kamsa and connect to Krishna. That's not the equation. They are both ISKCON. International Society for Kamsa Consciousness is ISK, is ISKCON. But our ISKCON is International Society for Krishna Consciousness. You cannot put one foot here and one foot there. Because when the boat goes ahead, right, or when the wind blows and the boat goes this way, that way, you end up just going in the water. So actually Kubja decided, I do not want to be connected to Kamsa. I want to be connected to Krishna. So she served Krishna. Service is a platform of connection. And she put nice sandalwood on him. And Krishna became so pleased that he put one foot on her foot. He took one hand like that and he straightened her up. And because of his touch, Kubja, who had no beauty, became the most beautiful woman in Mathura. Maharaj said she became Miss Mathura. She became Miss Mathura, more beautiful than any other lady actually. Why? Because of Krishna's touch. And when she invited Krishna to a house, Prabhupada writes in Krishna book, Krishna did not accept Kubja's invitation because she suddenly became beautiful. But he accepted her invitation because of the beauty of her service. The beauty of her service. So where was Kubja's beauty? It didn't matter to Krishna. The beauty was internal. The beauty was in devotion. So how many do we have? Where was Dharma's piety? Dhruva's immaturity? Gajendra's knowledge? Kubja's beauty? And now, where was Sudama's wealth? Where was Sudama's wealth? Sudama Vipra has zero bank balance. I think our Sudama Prabhu has more in bank balance. But Sudama Vipra in Porbandar, he had nothing in the bank. Nothing. But source of income is not source of maintenance. And so even though he had no money, no wealth. His true wealth was his devotion to Krishna. That's why Maharaj said, you can be materially very opulent, but don't be spiritually bankrupt. Better to be spiritually opulent and materially bankrupt. That's better. But best to have something, but always be spiritually full. That is the important thing. So Sudama had nothing. He went to Krishna with nothing. But Krishna could not reciprocate what Sudama gave. Can you imagine that? Because what Sudama gave was borrowed cheap price. And Krishna could not borrow from anyone. Why? Because nobody can give Krishna anything. Why? Because everything belongs to Krishna. Can you imagine that? So actually Krishna cannot borrow something from anyone, because everything belongs to him. We can borrow. So therefore Krishna became defeated by Sudama's lack of wealth, but his devotion. So how many do we have now? Dharma's piety, Dhruva's immaturity, Rajendra's knowledge, Kunja's beauty, Sudama's wealth, Vidurasya. Where was Vidura's noble birth? Vidura had no noble birth. He was the son of a kept mistress, in the words of Duryodhana in the 3rd canto. Son of a kept mistress. He had no noble birth. And even though he had no noble birth, he came back to save Dhritarashtra, who was born of the highest parentage. Someone with no noble birth had to deliver someone with the highest noble birth. What does that say of devotional service? Nobility is not a prerequisite for bhakti. All of this actually, if you read the shlokas well, piety is a disqualification. Maturity, right? Lack of maturity. Maturity, supposing, can be a disqualification. Knowledge can be a disqualification. Beauty can be a disqualification. Wealth can be a disqualification. Vidura's lack of noble birth was a qualification. And therefore noble birth can be a disqualification. It can be. Even though Vidura was not born of nobility, don't forget, he was Yamaraj. And I don't think you can ever fault Yamaraj in any which way, because he's Mahajan. Nobody will take a chance with Yamaraj, isn't it? And therefore, Yamaraj, Vidura, though he was born of ignoble birth, his behavior was the most noble. Most noble. He was thrown out, but he came back for his brother. How noble is that? How noble is that? And when he came back, he delivered his brother. And even though he was thrown out, did he grudge anyone? Did he blame Duryodhana? Did he criticize his brother? No. He took that as an opportunity to connect with Krishna. How? Go for yatra. Go and hear Bhagavatam. While the whole world is fighting battle of Kurukshetra, Vidura was sitting and hearing Bhagavatam. That's not a bad deal, isn't it? It's not a bad deal at all. And this is the effect of devotional service. And one last one. Ugrasena's chivalrous strength. Where was Ugrasena's chivalrous strength? Ugrasena had no chivalrous strength. He was a puppet. He was really a puppet. Actually, when Ugrasena was there, the first thing Kamsa did was to throw him into jail. And Ugrasena could not counteract that. He was such a weak ruler, he could not counteract that. And when he was freed even, Krishna was running Dwarka. Actually, Ugrasena was not running Dwarka. And the one time when Ugrasena wanted to run Dwarka was the one time when these boys behaved, foolishly and went to the sages, dressed up Samba as a woman, put a pillow under her and made her look pregnant, went to the sages and said, "My dear sirs, can you tell me what is the gender of this child?" And the sages became so angry that they cursed that this will be the start of the end of the Yadu dynasty. And when they opened Samba's sari, there was a mace, a club. And they all went to see Ugrasena. Ugrasena should have asked Krishna, what should be done? And Krishna was there present, but Ugrasena never asked Krishna, never consulted with Krishna. And that's the other thing Maharaj told us. When you are connected to Krishna, you are conscious of Krishna. There's another C word for connection. When you consult Krishna or consult his devotees, you become connected to Krishna. So there must be consultation. There must be, what's the other C? There must be consciousness, and then there will be connection. Never perform devotional service without consulting with fellow devotees. That's why we discuss. That's why we have Ishta Goshti. Prabhu, what do you think? Mataji, what do you think? We are asking their guidance from a spiritual point of view. So Ugrasena in the end had no chivalry. And then one time he made a decision, was to, he said, you just crush the cloud and make it into fine powder and throw it into the ocean. And that way the Yadu dynasty will be saved. But it was not saved. Because all the powder came back to Prabhash Kshetra and they became the most powerful reed grasses. And one that could not be broken became the arrowhead that would end the story and the pastime of Krishna in this world. So where was Ugrasena's chivalrous strength? No chivalrous strength. So how many in conclusion? Prabhu's Mataji's how many? Dharma. Where was Dharma's? Next. 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 And next one. And last one. Ugrasena's chivalrous strength. And the verse ends very nicely by saying that Lord Madhava is pleased only by devotional service and not by material qualifications. So there is a deep connection between how we connect to Krishna, how we are conscious of Krishna, how we are connected to Krishna, how we consult Krishna, and how much we deepen our faith in Krishna, and how much we deepen our determination in serving Krishna. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki, Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavad Gita ki, Srila Prabhupada ki, Srila Gurudev ki, Nitai Gaur. Are there any questions, any comments? Yes, Lakshmana. Do we have a mic? Or we can use this mic? I can hear it. Is it working? Never mind, you speak, I will repeat. I spoke a lot about connection with Krishna, but only once about rejection. Is there any possibility that a devotee can be rejected by Krishna? Very nice question. If actually we are devotees, then by definition Krishna will never reject us. If we are devotional in our behavior, then there is no reason for Krishna to reject us. Krishna will always accept us. But if we are looking like devotees, but not behaving like devotees, then it is the behavior that defines our connection to Krishna. And therefore, if our behavior is not up to the mark, Prabhu, then we may appear to be devotees, but the connection is lost with Krishna. In that way, we are rejected by Krishna. But Krishna is so kind, Prabhu, that he never rejects anyone. Frankly speaking, we are rejecting Krishna. Krishna is always ready to be a real friend of us. So the moment we show any kind of effort towards Krishna, then rejection is immediately replaced by connection. But the connection must be there. That's why the demons are rejected by Krishna, because they don't want to be connected to Krishna. But a devotee may sometimes make mistakes, but in their hearts they do want to be connected to Krishna. So if a devotee is disturbed, they should seek the blessings and the sadhu sangha of other devotees. And through other devotees, they will quickly become connected to Krishna again. Sometimes it's a spectrum. You may be connected only on the surface, but another devotee's sadhana and behavior is very deep, and so that connection is very deep. So we are all on a spectrum. Maybe we are 10% connected, someone is 30% connected, but there is always some connection to Krishna. Is that helpful? Cultural?
Hello? Prabhu, two things just not able to match. You might first you mentioned the statement that Maharaj said, how do you know if a person is peaceful? By seeing that everyone around him is peaceful.
Yes.
But the next thing that you said is that you asked the question to Maharaj that what if I'm envious of another person? So if I'm not peaceful and another person be in his presence and I am envious, that's why I'm not being peaceful. So a person is peaceful, around him everybody should be peaceful. That's why I am envious of.
What I meant, Prabhu, maybe I wasn't clear, is that if we are peaceful by constitution and devotion, then others around us will also become pacified and peaceful. But if we are envious by nature or critical by nature, then others around us also will become disturbed. That is what I meant.
Okay, so in Maharaj said that statement, you are envious of him being peaceful.
If you are envious of someone who is peaceful, then even if that person is peaceful and you are in the presence of that person and you find I'm not peaceful, it's because of your envy and not the person's devotion.
But they can also put this argument that if that person is really peaceful, he should have made everybody peaceful, including the one who is envious.
Prabhupada was very peaceful, but many people who were with Prabhupada were also not peaceful. So therefore it proves that someone who is pure may be peaceful. Krishna is very peaceful, Prabhu, but we are around Krishna, but we are not peaceful. That's because of the envy within our hearts. It's not the fault of Krishna. Krishna is giving mercy, but we are not receiving it. Someone is giving peace to you, but you must be a receptacle for that peace also. If you are not a receptacle for that peace, if you are not spiritually responsible to receive that peace, then even though others around you are becoming peaceful with that person, you continue to have issues with that person because of your envy. Is that helpful?
Yes. So, but the original definition, does it hold good?
What is the original definition?
How do you find someone is peaceful means everybody around you should be peaceful?
Prabhu, generally you know when someone is peaceful because people around him don't have issues with him. They always connect. You see, when we saw Maharaj, when we see our spiritual masters, as they move around, what Maharaj meant was, people are always connected to them, they remember Krishna, they become inspired by them. So that general principle is there, because an acharya or a devotee is able to inspire peace in others, because they are peaceful. If I have $5 in my pocket, I can only give you 5. But if I have 5 and I can't give you more, but that doesn't mean that everyone who connects with that person will be peaceful. Kamsa connected with Krishna, but his connection was on the basis of envy. So even though many people were inspired by Krishna, even while Krishna was here, many people were also not inspired by Krishna. So the general principle is there, but there's also the other principle that we have a responsibility to, from our end. Does that help?
Yes.
Viraj Prabhu. Oh, Sudama Prabhu, yes.
Hare Krishna, thank you for the wonderful session. It has been in the last few days you talked about purity and perfection, right? So there are a couple of things that I wanted some clarification on. In terms of purity is a qualitative, you can't measure somebody's purity per se, but whenever we do something for Krishna, we want to be as much perfect as possible. So again, we cannot say that it's a person who is trying to achieve perfection doing something for Krishna is not pure or something.
Actually, what we mean, Prabhu, is when we want to do something for Krishna, we want to do it with as pure an intention as possible. Not perfect.
But if we are trying to achieve perfection with that,
what if you are trying to do something with the right intention, that is purity. But if you are trying to perform something in a perfect manner, then the emphasis is more on how it looks externally. The emphasis of purity is more on your intention. But if your intention is pure, then that is perfect. Unfortunately, the tendency for us is we don't look at our intentions, and very often we don't know other people's intentions. So we look at something very perfect externally and we say that person is perfect. But Shastras have told us that there can be many imperfections about a person. Vidura's lack of noble birth, Kubja's lack of beauty, but they were accepted by Krishna because their intent of devotion was something that Krishna was very pleased with. We may not be able to measure it as you rightly said, but we should be cautious not to judge others. Because who can know someone's heart except Krishna and Guru, Sadhu and Shastra? So when we understand that, when we work with others, be kind to them if they are not perfect in what they can do. Maybe their gardening is not very good, but if they are working very hard, fan the flames of their intent, and eventually the garden becomes perfect. But if the garden is very perfect, but the intent is to show the garden is perfect, then it may not always translate into a deepening of connection. Is that helpful? The same principle of perfection and purity is also the principle of principle and detail. Very often we do devotion service, but we are caught up in the detail, but we forget the principle. The principle, for example, is to remember Krishna. The Matajis are doing the garlands there. Now, as they are doing garlands, they are remembering Krishna, and that garlands are being offered to Krishna. If we say why you're not sitting down and you're not paying attention, then it's a detail. But the principle is they are remembering Krishna. Sometimes we get caught up by the detail and we forget the principle. That's also very helpful.
Thank you.
Yes. Suvarna Prabhu, please. Viraj Prabhu, I'll come back to you. I'm sure you're giving me a realization.
Hare Krishna,
yes.
Prabhu, just one question. How to come out of the envy?
How to
Come out of envy.
How to come out of it?
Is there any possibility there will be non-envious in our lifetime?
Yeah, it's a very good question. Is it possible that we could be non-envious in our lifetime? I think a good prayer is the prayer we put forward. Because by nature, Prabhu, because we are in the material world, Shastras tell us that it is very difficult to come out of envy in our hearts. It's good for a devotee to accept that envy is always there, but we are always trying to come out of being envious. When a devotee accepts that, the devotee becomes remorseful of his or her envy, and in that remorse we become regretful. In that regret, we actually become repentant. And when we are repentant, Krishna allows us to have his darshan. So actually accepting that we have envy in our heart, as you so rightly pointed out, is a very important step towards deepening our connection with Krishna. If we say we are not envious, actually we are very proud. Because it's also easy for us to become proud that, Prabhu, I'm not envious of you. See, the way I say it already, you know I'm proud of it, isn't it? That means the next time you do something right, I could very well become envious of you. Pride, envy and anger, they're all related to it. The source of envy is pride. So to the first point of yours, if we want to wipe out envy, we have to diminish our pride. When we are proud, we think I can be better than someone. But in life, someone is always better than us. But we still have pride. So if someone's better than us and we are proud of who we are, we become envious of that person who is doing better than us. That is how envy comes from. So the source of envy, Shastras tell us, is actually pride. If we are really humble by nature, we will never become envious of others. Because if others do something better than us, we have nothing to be proud of because we know we are not good in that. We become happy for them. We become inspired by them. We want to learn from them. So where there is no pride, envy is not there. But because we are born into this material world, pride is so much a part of this material constitution. And how can pride go? By nice practice of Krishna consciousness. Pride comes because we desire, and our desires are materially motivated. It gives rise to pride. Is that helpful?
Although we always say that we are not envy, but the deeper inside,
It's very true.
And I think enviousness there in our spiritual life also, that is Prabhuji is better than me, he knows more verses and he very well prepared in the class and we are not up to that mark, so we are also envy of that.
Yes. And I asked Maharaj, supposing amongst devotees we are envious of each other, Maharaj stopped me. He said, if amongst devotees we are envious of each other, you're not devotees. You're not devotees then. Then go back to the basic and tell yourself that you are actually not devotee because you are envious. You are trying to be a devotee. You are trying to come out of envy, but you haven't become a devotee. It was a very sobering point that Maharaj brought up to us. It was in Singapore when he told us that. Is that okay, Prabhu?
Thank you.
Last, Viraj Prabhu? Vaishnav Prabhu, is it okay? We end with Viraj Prabhu. Viraj Prabhu, the mic.
Hare Krishna, apologies Prabhuji. Wasn't a question, just wanted to comment, and I think your discussion with Siddhartha Prabhu, you've already explained it to a great extent. To say enviousness, we are born in this material world, as Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, Shadvesha Savartena. So, and that's why we are here, because of the envy. And in relation to pure devotee, who is always peaceful, as you rightly said, but even devotee of the caliber of Prahlad Maharaj, also, although he doesn't have any enemies, but others are envious towards him.
Yes.
So in his prayer, Prahlad Maharaj very nicely says, Swastyastu Vishwasya Kala Prasiddha. So when envious persons are not pacified in presence of pure devotee, then the pure devotee takes the onus upon themselves to pray for them.
Yes.
And actually that is our good fortune of being connected to Maharaj, because that envy we saw was always absent in Maharaj.
Very true. Thank you so much, Prabhu. Thank you so much. We have to end now because of time. Vaishnav Prabhu, any announcements? Rishikesh Prabhu, oh, okay. Rishikesh Prabhu, okay.
Hare Krishna. So Prabhuji Mataji, we spoke in the morning.